So hello everyone. I think that during the flow of our discussion we are moving closer and closer to our customers, right? And you can see that our objective is to discuss with you experience orchestration. You are very well familiar with channel orchestration, you know, different technologies, process, but you know, what we try to do today is to introduce the notion of experience orchestration and get valuable practical insights from our participants. I am Alexey Cherchago. I'm running Global Commercial Excellence in Glenmark Pharmaceuticals. And let's start with the introduction of our panelists. Lishan, let's start with you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Lishan Dubois. I'm Global Head of Customer Experience and Marketing in Grünenthal. It's my first time here as an attendee, but also as a speaker, so I'm a bit nervous about the exercise. But yeah, as I stated, I work for Grünenthal, and I'm very proud to be working for this company for two reasons. I'll be very short. The first one is that Grünenthal has decided to understand that customer experience is key, and has decided to create a team dedicated to this. We're just two, including myself for now, but it's a good start. And the other reason is that this company has a real purpose, and this purpose resonates in the mind of the customer, which is to contribute to all free of pain, so it makes the mission even more easy to do.
Thank you very much. Richard.
Hi everybody, Richard Adams. I started my career in the pharmaceutical industry before most of you were born here, I think. I leapt over into technology pretty quickly. I'm now on my third CEO-ship. I'm super excited to be leading Exeevo as we drive the next generation of CRM in participation with Microsoft.
Olivier?
Also a good morning from my side. Olivier, heading Commercial Excellence in Novo Nordisk region SEEMEA. I joined the organization about 2.5 years ago, moving on from Abbott. It was a bit of a personal choice to join the organization, but really happy to be here and sharing some of the practices with you and with the team here.
Thank you, guys. And the first question, we are going to talk about experience orchestration, how to define it, what we are going to talk about.
If I may start, perhaps, I think orchestration is really in the eyes of the beholder, right? So whatever we try to do from an internal perspective has to reflect and resonate with whoever is on the receiving side of the intended experience. And sometimes I think our internal processes take over in terms of what we actually try to bring across to the HCP. And if we start asking our HCPs, patients, in terms of what they actually remember from the engagement, it's actually very little. And particularly when we talk about orchestrated customer experience, it's not just our sales force. Yeah, I think within our organization, we talk more about frontline. Frontline being our medical reps, the commercial teams, medical liaison managers, as well as in-field market access colleagues. Yeah? And I'd like perhaps to make an analogy, hope that might resonate with you, at least it does with our teams, in the sense that everyone knows the job of a DJ, right? They're kind of playing with the DJ panel, and I think that's the same what our frontline is trying to do with the HCP. But now it's not just one DJ, it's multiple DJs working on the same panel. Yeah? So they're trying to make sure that the right message comes across at the right channel. So it's not just about turning up the volume, but making sure it hits the right notes whenever the HCP tries to receive this. And the content is basically what our frontline enabling functions are doing, the marketing colleagues, right? They have the CDs, the USB sticks, whatever content we authorize for them, they load it into what we can play with as a frontline function to bring that across to our HCP. Maybe later on we can talk about the kind of the change management toward orchestration, but this is, I think, the gist of what we're trying to do with customer orchestration in the field.
Lishan, Richard, any additional remarks around definition of what does it mean for you, experience orchestration?
Yeah. I was struck this morning by something. If you were here for Dario's opening presentation and his customer experience of the Hogwarts visit, I thought I was so excited. But did it register with you like it did with me that actually Dario's experience wasn't necessarily his, it was his children's, and seeing the experience through his children? Because that really resonated with me. In fact, I wouldn't mind flying one of those broomsticks. But let's draw the analogy here. In my view, we've heard a lot about the Experience being serving relevant information, serving the next best action and so on. But isn't it all about helping HCPs manage their patients? And isn't it all about putting yourself in the shoes of a healthcare professional faced with a challenge or faced with an opportunity to manage a patient better? And that sort of resonates with me because when I was looking at Dario's presentation, I was thinking of Dario as the HCP, and I was thinking of his children, and I was thinking of the HCP and the patient. And to me, that's what we've really got to think about. Let's make sure that we get to understanding that the real experience for the HCP is feeling really good about helping patients and delivering outcomes.
Yes, and actually the word relevance mentioned already, we mentioned in several talks, right? And I think I can hardly agree more. But okay, fine. We are more or less clear what we are going to talk about. But what is about successful strategies, right? How to implement, how to orchestrate experience. What would you recommend our audience from the practical perspective?
Well, you know, if you pick up a few words in the title and think about the orchestration, let's just remind ourselves of what that actually takes to deliver a great outcome from a big orchestra, right? It's a team effort. And for me, thinking about commercial's transition to full orchestration is not about the commercial function turning up the volume, Olivier. It is about the whole organization working together in order to be able to understand that experience and deliver on it. And I think you've got to get that culture moving in the right direction. I think if you're going to really ensure that each part of the organization makes a contribution, they've got to understand what's in it for them and what's in it for the whole organization as a whole. So I think you've got to gather insight. I think you've got to deliver some proof points and demonstrate that elevating the customer experience is truly beneficial.
Olivier?
I mean, it's particularly when it comes to kind of that orchestrating functions. A lot of the senior leaders within most of our organizations have grown to be successful by just knowing face-to-face engagements, right? And it's probably more like the COVID might have served as a catalyst, but it was even prior to that, there was a bit of a groundswell of bottom-up initiatives from marketeers, sales colleagues who understood that face-to-face is no longer going to cut it. So I think there's this upward movement of making that change happen, because at the end of the day, our senior leaders still have that budget that allow us to implement the processes and technology that will help us to deliver that kind of experienced, orchestrated experience to our customers, and then trickling down again towards the front line that they have the tools available to them. And by the time it might have been kind of already too late, so the next movement is happening. So it's in that type of wave that we need to continue to work bottom up, top down, bottom up, top down, to make sure we can continue to deliver that customer experience for our HCPs.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we discuss how to approach it, but what are key challenges? You know, what for sure we don't know all the answers, all the recipes, you know, for all participants, but maybe by now we collected first experience which can help us to avoid some mistakes. I don't know, some technologies which didn't work, at least from your perspective. What didn't work?
What didn't work? Well, look, we can talk about technology knitting all this together, for sure. And what doesn't work is people trying to replicate the past and think they're going to get something different in the future. So from a technology perspective, for sure, there are requirements now to integrate information and data in unified platforms to be able to ensure that the access to that information can then be leveraged as in pursuit of these experiences. So there are all kinds of lessons to learn and lots of disaster stories of the past in terms of technology not really delivering properly. But I think that the key thing is that you've got to be able to ensure that the adoption is strong. And that then goes back to people, it goes back to change management, it goes back to the importance of bringing everybody along that journey. There are all kinds of technology opportunities today, and we've heard a lot about it this morning already, but unless we can bring the organization along to adopt and utilize, the result won't happen.
One specific question here. Actually, technology assumes harmonization. To be able to automate something, we try to harmonize, you know, one another business process. But at the same time, what we can see now in the engagement, we are talking about personalization. How to be able to automate, harmonize, and at the same time personalize engagement. What would be your recommendations here?
sorry, I feel like I'm dominating here, but I think from the perspective of personalization, I think one of the challenges is getting insight and gathering feedback. It's not easy in this world because of regulation and so on. And the industry has always wanted to engage with patients, but at the same time being scared about what engaging with patients means. It's always wanted to receive feedback from healthcare professionals and suffers from the same syndrome. And yet I don't think you can really deliver a personal experience unless you really understand, and therefore you need the two-way communication to take place. So unless the feedback mechanism can be improved, I don't think it's as easy as you might think.
Olivier, Lishan, any additional? Lishan?
No, I fully agree with what you have said, and will be part of what I will be speaking on later on. Indeed, making sure that you have internally a cross-functional way to capture customers' feedback is key, and that you don't have silos within the organization to empower to have, I would say, a cross-functional feedback map, we would call it, to make sure that the feedback you collect from the field and from other ways also is just there on one single. Some companies work with platform, we call it voice of the customer platform. Others have a more, I would say, less expensive way to collect this feedback, but yeah, make sure that you break those silos, and I would say that working on customer experience is a great opportunity to break those silos and put everybody around the table and discuss about what the customer are telling you about the experience that they have with your company.
Right.
No, I mean, I think it's a very, very fair point, because I think so far we've been talking pretty theoretical, but at the end of the day, right, it's all about what the customer thinks, how they feel, and how they act. And I mean, there's different metrics in terms of how you can start measuring this, NPS, satisfaction score, experience score, and so forth. But I think if we're really looking into the mirror, I think there's a step that we're missing into the process, how we orchestrate, which is, do we ever bring the customer to our decision-making table? The majority of us will devise a campaign, marketing material, create sales force sizes, what have you, but then only after the fact we think about, okay, what's the impact on our customer? What's the impact on our patient? And when we have the budget, we'll ask, but it's not that we incorporate kind of the HCP as part of our decision-making process. Hand to heart, guilty of that, but at the same time, like if we don't start bringing them in, and I'm talking about kind of panels where they discuss the most important decisions in our organization, that we leave it up to them through an external agency that we commission to do the research, but more like bringing them, not on a day-to-day basis, but more just have a listening process in place that help us understand, will this make sense to our customers and the intended experience that we want to bring.
Right. And probably you mentioned metrics, but how to track, how to track progress around implementation of orchestration, especially when we are talking about experience.
Yeah, I think I can take this one, and I think before talking about how to measure, I think it's really important to really know what we're talking about. We are talking about customer understanding. And when we speak about customer understanding, I like to quote Dale Carnegie there, because because he says that when we deal with people, you're dealing with creator of logic, and we're not dealing with creator of logic, sorry, but creator of emotion. And I'll be a bit provocative here, because if you think you know your customers, in fact, you may be wrong, because you really don't get it all. And I would say that it takes a lot of energy to really understand what drives customers, what are their deep need and expectation, and what they're trying to achieve when they come to your company. So I would say that, well, customer understanding is basically everything that you need to know to understand what your customers are looking, or they're coming to you. And we know that it's really hard for them to rationalize their needs and expectations, because it was Florent that was mentioning trust just before. What they're looking for trust, they're looking for confidence, they're looking for empowerment, they're looking for happiness. And how do you get to this without having a proper process? So I think what's really important is really to understand what is the end goal of the customer. What is it that they're trying to achieve when they come to us, and what do they expect to do? They have to go through the process with you. So just to move forward, I think it's Rolls-Royce coming here, and when we speak about customer understanding, and I will quote there Annette France, and I really recommend you to go through her book, Customer Understanding, where she explained, in fact, the different ways of collecting customer understanding, and you have a wealth of data here. The first one is about listening and asking. listen before asking, because in your company you have already a lot of channels and way to listen to your customer, because they're providing a lot of feedback to you. Some of those feedback are already spontaneous. The other one you need to go and ask for. But this is, first step, I would say, go across all your channel and see what your customers are really telling you. The second one is about characterizing, and this is where you need to clearly understand and define what the customers are looking for. This is where you go with your persona, and just quoting the customer-facing functions you were referring to, even then, it's very difficult to define that customer and explain in an objective way that what really matters for them. And I would say the third one is about emphasizing, and you were mentioning about the importance of putting oneself in the shoes of the customers. And this is a really important step that you need to go through customer journey mapping to really understand the different steps your customers go through, when they're dealing with you, purchasing choosing your product or your services. And I think this is a really important process. And then the question is, once you have all this, make sure that you do something about this, take actions. And this is another, I would say, an important challenge, is how do you deal with all the feedback that you collect? Who owns the feedback? Who owns the fact that you need to redistribute the feedback that you have in the company to the relevant person and make sure that something happens and somebody follows up on the action that have been taken. So on the first example, just a few examples and not to speak too much here. Try to collect the different way where you can gather customer feedback. So of course you will have everything that is coming directly from the customer. You have the social media, you have the call center, etc. You have also the opportunity to look at your customer in their own environment, and there's where you would go for ethnographic, for example, immersion, going with your customer-facing function and look at your customer. What is it does it take them to go through the journey they have with you? And then you have a lot of other channels with, of course, different purposes. I would say that all makes sense, because the question would be, which one should I go first? And I would say it really depends on the CX maturity of your company. What is it that you already know about your customer? Are you already in a customer segment that you know? Or are you discovering this segment? Are you launching a product in a completely new therapeutic area? So maybe you would go first for market research and then try to understand and go deeper in the customer understanding. So I would say that always have their relevancy, but it will mainly depend on what is it that you're trying to achieve. What is your purpose? What is the purpose of your customers? And according to that, you will go to one or the other channel.
Mm-hmm. One specific question. We are talking about tracking. You're not trying to consolidate, I don't want to say KPIs, but some measures, right? Flaum mentioned that it's really important to ensure proper quality of the data. Otherwise, all IT technology, all AI tools, they're not flying. How you are able in your organization to consolidate these kind of soft insights and put it into the hard data structure?
So if I refer to what we're doing in Grünenthal, I would say we are in the early stage of this, of collecting this feedback, and takes time. I don't know, somebody referred this morning that it's a step-to-step approach. You can't have it all from overnight. So I would say that most companies usually start with having, the classical CSAT, NPS, customer effort score, to really understand and have feedback from the customers. But I would say that if you really want to go deeper and be more ambitious about understanding your customer, I would say you should go through a proper customer journey mapping, because you cannot understand what improvement you can bring to your company if you don't understand the current state of your customers and how they're dealing with your companies. So put yourself in the customer's shoes, try to focus on, and there also when you use NPS and CSAT score, there are two ways to map your journey. You can do this at the relationship level, which is to understand basically what your customer feel about interacting with your company, whatever the touch point they have with you. But then you can do this on a more precise way, which is to go through sub-journey. How do they feel about attending to your webinars? How they feel about attending peer-to-peer events, etc. So I would say, depending on the objective and what you want to know about your customers, then you will have a step-by-step approach, focusing on the sub-journey, and then focusing on the overall relationship they have with you.
Thank you. Olivier, maybe some comments from your side?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree that I think customer journey mapping is, I think, the farthest we've come, I think, within the industry, which is a bit of a shame, right? You have the typical segmentation and targeting, your target class, adoption letter that helps you to understand which type of information ticks with the HCP personas, how they behave. Based on that, you build a journey, but it's still not up to, let's say, a segment of one, right? Because you think about, they don't act like a logical person. And I think we've been very unfruitful in terms of really identifying their unmet needs and requirements. Research after research, even through our frontline, we only know what we ask, but there's so many things that we haven't asked, right? If we truly want to understand, and as Florent mentioned, build that trust, so you can actually go deeper in terms of the commercial objectives or patient objectives that you have. So I think there's still quite a bit of a way to go, unfortunately.
And Richard, from the perspective of technology, do we have something which can help us to accomplish this task?
Yeah, it's quite a challenge they threw down there, isn't it, from a technology point of view? But the reality is there are some solutions and opportunities to integrate information more effectively than in the past. The openness of technology to be able to draw data from multiple sources continues to advance. But you need to do that, because if you don't bring it all together, then leaving it in silos is, we all know, naturally challenging, and it doesn't allow you to participate in the opportunity available. But I think the other point I would mention about technology is, don't think that necessarily any one technology or any one organization can solve it all. I would suggest that it's very important to think about how you put different competencies together, create partnerships and opportunities between organizations who have special disciplines and areas of focus in order to be able to achieve a better outcome. An example might be, you're all using, let's say, third-party digital engagement channels, but how do you incorporate data from those digital engagement channels into other parts of your customer management organization? So there continues to be increasingly I think, practical solutions. But don't forget the partnering.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Before closing the session, maybe 30 seconds, key messages you would like our audience take away after our discussion.
I think about Dario's children on the broomstick is my key message, because that to me is the analogy between the HCP and the patient.
Thank you. Lishan?
Yeah, maybe coming back to your previous question, which is how to measure. I think something is really important is that you need to work on the CX measurement framework. And what's really important there is that you need to connect your CX metrics to your financial and operational metrics, so that you can show to the organization that the improvement you make along the journey has a direct impact on the finance of the company. I think this is where the challenge is. But it's also a very nice opportunity, to break the silos there on how you analyze data and what decision you take out of it, and to make sure that we have a common way of measuring the impact we have on the customers.
Thank you. Fully agree. And I think what will lead to the financial is more kind of what the customer wants. Sometimes there's a massive internal push within the organization. Yes, we need to do multi-channel. Yes, we need to do omni-channel, without ever really listening to what the customer actually wants. So there's a time and place where, yes, omnichannel has its benefits and its purpose, but there are others where the typical non-orchestrated approach still might make sense. So it's not just kind of push because we need to know, it's like make sure that it fits to what the market actually wants. Yeah.
So thank you very much. Thanks a lot for your interesting insights, guys. Thank you, and I think that we have time for one question.
Can we get a mic to the lady?
Yeah.
Just a question or comment to one of the last points that were made. So I don't want to dismiss entirely the whole idea of NPS and surveying, but I'm also wondering to what extent are we maybe overemphasizing on that? Personally, I don't remember having answered an NPS for Amazon or any other sort of similar brand. How can we work more with empirical data, such as simply if you send out the newsletter, the different clicks
Thank you,
Yeah.
Adela.
Maybe I can take this one. And indeed, the NPS, the CSAT scores, those kind of scales have an interest when you, of course, have an open-ended question to it, which is why do they rate your company or the transaction this way? And if I speak about the experience from Grünenthal, we didn't decide to start from this. We decided to go for the sub-journey and really starting small, understanding what was currently happening with the customer on very specific sub-journey, building this knowledge, and then we will consider using the CSAT, the NPS score, on a very specific and relevant topic that we need to measure.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, and I invite you actually to continue this discussion in today afternoon and tomorrow. Thank you, guys.